Hello everyone and welcome to 9 Inch Charge, a Warhammer Age of Sigmar and Warhammer the Old World discussion channel. Today we're going to talk about enhancements, specifically the universal enhancements found in the new core rules for Age of Sigmar 3rd edition. I had such a great time talking on the stream with Tom about these. I kind of felt they deserved their own video, and we can go through and discuss them and then throw them out there into the comments. Get the conversation started about what combos you think will work best, either internally for these enhancements or for specific armies and factions. Just before we start, as ever, if you enjoyed this video, please drop it a like, and if you'd like to see more content like this in the future, please subscribe to the channel. Okay, so what is an enhancement? Each set of allegiance abilities includes a number of enhancements that are given to specific units in an army. Enhancements are divided into command traits, artifacts of power, spell laws, prayer scriptures, mount traits, triumphs, and one or more sets of unique enhancements. Enhancements are picked after you have chosen the battalions for your army. You can always take one enhancement of each type for your army, and the battalions or battle packs you're using may allow you to use additional enhancements for your army. Okay, so enhancements is just a word that groups together all of the artifacts and spell laws and things like that that your army brings in addition to just the units on their own. What's cool about these universal ones is that you get access to them regardless of your allegiance ability or none. So let's have a look through them and see what we think. First up, the command traits. Number 1, Battle Lust. This general is always eager for combat. You can reroll run rolls and charge rolls for this general. I like this because it potentially frees up a command point for at the double or trying to reroll your charge moves. I like it because it gets your general where he needs to be. If your general is a bit of a beat stick and he's on a big monster, or if he is a big monster, then this is going to be really useful to getting him where he needs to be without having to spend command points. So far so good. The next one is Skilled Leader. This general directs their forces with consummate skill. If this general is on the battlefield at the start of your hero phase, roll a dice. On a 5+, you receive 1 extra command point. On a 5+, this is probably only going to happen twice in a game, but it's nice and it stacks with other things. There are other ways to get extra command points, so the more of these that you bring, the more likely you are to get more. Obviously, it does depend on the general being on the battlefield, so hopefully he won't be dead. What I like about this one is that it's just useful in all situations. You know, you might have a general that you don't want to reroll, run, and charge rolls. They might be, you know, a wizard or something like that, and something that isn't going to get into combat. Whereas making them a consummate leader, they can still add something. Next up is High Priest. This general is a wise and experienced cleric. You can reroll chanting rolls for this general. When you chant a prayer, there's no chance of it being dispelled. Only incantations can be dispelled. So the only thing actually stopping you from being able to successfully get your prayers off is your own ability to roll dice. So having this will help you out in that, and it will make it more likely that you get those prayers off. I think it's situational. I think it only really if you've built your army around getting a certain prayer off and it's that important to you, would you take this. But I think it's quite fun, and I think there are situations where it'd be useful, like I said, if you've built your army around, for example, Curse, which we'll come on to later on. Next up is Heroic Stature. This mighty general towers over those under their command. Add 1 to the general's wound characteristic. To be honest, this one is a bit meh. 1 extra wound isn't all that, in my opinion. It isn't game changing. It doesn't really add to their synergies or let them bring anything more to the army. It makes them a bit more durable, but sometimes 1 wound can be the difference between the game. I get that, but I think there are better ones out there. And lastly, we have Master of Magic. This general's knowledge of the arcane is unsurpassed. Once per hero phase, you can reroll 1 casting roll, dispelling roll, or unbinding roll for this general. I think it's fine. I think with all the magic floating around at the minute, a bit more magic defense doesn't hurt at all whatsoever. I think it's also pretty good considering that now miscasts are a thing. And if you've got someone who's a multiple spellcaster, when you miscast, you aren't able to cast another spell. And I can only imagine that if, for example, your first spell is the spell portal and you've miscast, you would really find this valuable at that point. So for making sure that all your spells get through as you want them to, I think this is a pretty good option, again, if you've built your army around your magic user. Next up, we have Universal Artifacts of Power, and I think some of these are pretty good actually. The first one is the Amulet of Destiny. This amulet subtly influences the fate of the one who bears it. The bearer has a ward of 5+. I can't really see a situation where this wouldn't be useful. Obviously, you want to keep your general alive because he's the one who's generating your command points. So having this on them just gives them that little bit extra. I mean, you can also combine this now with the command trait that we saw, Battle Lust, to create a general who rerolls his runs and charge rolls, and when he's in combat or elsewhere will have a 5-up ward save. So I think this is pretty good. It's also good on wizards, just any character you want to protect really. I can see this becoming a go-to, a bit like the Ethereal Amulet was before. I certainly want to start bringing it. Next is the Vial of Manticore Venom. This potent venom can be applied to a weapon's edge, rendering it even deadlier. Pick one of the bearer's melee weapons, add one to the wound rolls for attacks made with that weapon. I quite like this. I think on the surface it doesn't seem great, but actually when you think about it, there's lots of new ways now, for example with all-out attack and things like that, to increase your to-hit rolls, but this increases your to-wound roll. So what it enables you to do then, if you spend a command point and you have this, you can get +1 to hit and wound with your hero's weapon. And if they've got a particularly potent weapon that you think is a good beat stick, something that you think could skewer many opponents or cleave through a unit, this is something definitely to consider. The next one is one of my favourites of all of the enhancements that we've got here, and it's the Arcane Tome. The pages of this ancient grimoire grant the bearer arcane power. The bearer becomes a wizard that knows the Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield spells. They can attempt to cast one spell in your hero phase and attempt to unbind one spell in the enemy hero phase. If the bearer is already a wizard, they can attempt to cast one additional spell instead. And the reason why I really like this one is because previously we've seen some things that are similar to this, where it says the bearer can cast a spell in the same manner as a wizard, but it doesn't actually give them the wizard keyword and doesn't make them become a wizard. This tome makes your hero become a wizard, which is great. It means that they'll be able to take a spell lore from either the generic spell lore that we'll have a look at coming up, or from your own book. And actually, Mystic Shield and Arcane Bolt have become a bit better this edition, so they're worth having just anyway, I think. I think there's a lot of people that in AoS2 weren't really looking at these spells to cast, but now that Arcane Bolt, you can kind of wind it up in your hero phase and unleash it in the combat or charge phase, and it does D3 mortals. It's looking a bit better, and Mystic Shield +1 to save also looking a bit better. So I think this is really good. I think this is a bit of a go-to. I'm thinking of putting it on a character in my Living Cities in substitute of taking a Battle Mage. So it's freed me up 115 points. And the last artifact of power is the Seed of Rebirth. This seed-shaped gem hails from Gairan, the Realm of Life. You can reroll heroic recovery rolls for the bearer. I'm not too sure about this one, if I'm honest. Being able to reroll heroic recovery rolls is fine, but just to recap on heroic recovery, you have to pass a leadership test on 2 dice, so roll under your leadership test and you heal D3 wounds. If you roll exactly your leadership, you heal 1 wound. But your general or your leader should have good bravery anyway. I think this is would be quite good on generals who you think are a bit cowardly, but hopefully no one's taking a cowardly general. So I can't really see this one being used too much. I might be wrong. If you think you've got a good use for it, let me know in the comments. Next up is the Universal Spell Lore, and the first spell is Flaming Weapon. One of the caster's weapons is engulfed by arcane fire. Flaming Weapon is a spell that has a casting value of 4. If successfully cast, pick one of the caster's melee weapons and add 1 to the damage characteristics of that weapon until your next hero phase. I feel like this one is built for taking with the Arcane Tome. I think that you're going to put this on a hero, make them into a wizard, and then make them take the Flaming Weapon spell. And you can even, with the command trait, let them re-roll that casting roll, and now all of a sudden your hero is attacking with +1 damage. And do not underrate the difference +1 damage has. Going from something like a damage 2 weapon to a damage 3 weapon is huge. In many cases, it's 1 more dead enemy with every successful attack. Moving along to the second spell, we have Levitate. The spellcaster makes themselves or an ally lighter than air. Levitate is a spell that has a casting value of 8 and a range of 18 inches. If successfully cast, pick one friendly unit wholly within range and visible to the caster. That unit can fly into your next hero phase. I really like this. I think on the surface people are going to think that it isn't brilliant, but actually I really think it is brilliant on certain units. I'm thinking about units like cavalry units and things like that. Something that's got a long move and is going to get held up by screens because it doesn't have fly. So personally, I'm thinking of flying some Fulminators over some screens to get into the backfield. But I mean, think about this, for example, cast on Gotrek or cast on Kragnos. Those models that people are just going to feed screens to. It's going to be absolutely game-changing if you can get this off. I mean, come on, who does not want to see that? Who doesn't want to see a Gotrek or a Kragnos leaping and flying over the top of the screens and just smashing into the enemy's backlines? The last spell from the Universal Spell Lore is Ghost Mist. At the wizard's command, a thick pall of mist descends over a nearby area of the battlefield. Ghost Mist is a spell that has a casting value of 5 and a range of 6 inches. If successfully cast, pick one terrain feature within range and visible to the caster, and until your next hero phase, visibility between two models is blocked if a straight line 1 mm wide is drawn between the closest points of two models that passes across more than 3 inches of that terrain feature. This effect does not block visibility to or from models with a wounds characteristic of 10 or more. This has a pretty short range, so your wizard does have to be right next to that bit of terrain if they're going to cast it. But it does have its applications with a lot of shooting going on in the meta right now, and I don't think that's set to go away anytime in the near future. This will just provide you with that little bit of cover instead of having to take the Prismatic Palisade or something like that. I mean, you could even do it on your own faction scenery, so you drop that down, you know where you want cover, you know, perhaps from that Caradron Overlord's army that you know is just going to drop down and try and blast you into oblivion, and then drop the spell down and make sure you protect those key units. So definitely an application, although not my favourite spell in the spell lore, and I don't know that we'll see it too much, but again, let me know in the comments if you feel differently. Next up is the Universal Prayer Scripture, and I have to say, I think that these are much better than the spells. So let's get through them. The first one is Guidance. The gods speak to their faithful, guiding them towards victory. Guidance is a prayer that has an answer value of 5. If answered, you receive 1 command point. So it does the same as Skilled Leader, but doesn't take up a command trait, which, you know, for certain armies, certain ones are really vital, and you might not want to sacrifice that just to get the chance of getting an extra command point. So I think this is a bit better than that. Again, it's only on a 5+. I mean, you could take both, and then that increases your chances. Then you're pretty likely to get 1 a turn. And if the dice gods are kind to you, you could get an additional 2 a turn. The next one is Heal. The gods listen to the prayers of their followers, healing the wounds they have suffered. Heal is a prayer that has an answer value of 3 and a range of 12 inches. If answered, pick one friendly model within range and visible to the chanter. You can heal up to D3 wounds allocated to that model. I think this is fine. I think there are more ways to heal models and rally models than ever before now. So I don't know that this is really vital. It's quite nice, you know, because it's got quite a big old range of 12. And, you know, if you've got a hero fighting in combat or a monster that you want to keep alive, you know, it could be useful. I think the one that really is the best is the next one, which is Curse. The priest calls upon the gods to render their enemies helpless before the battle zeal of the faithful. Curse is a prayer that has an answer value of 4 and a range of 9 inches. If answered, pick one enemy unit within range and visible to the character. Until your next hero phase, if the unmodified hit roll for an attack that targets the unit is 6, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound in addition to any normal damage. This is great because it is for any attack, so it can be shooting and it can be combat. I think there's some really great applications for this, and what it will do is it will really make your battle line units sing, because often they kind of have a weight of attacks but don't have a lot of rend or don't have a great damage characteristic to rely on. But this is going to give them a weight of attacks because they're your units that are going to be reinforced twice, so you're going to have a lot of them. I really want to try this on the Sisters of the Watch because they have an ability that means that they cause mortal wounds on a 6 for their wound roll. So adding Curse to this will mean a hit of a 6 and a wound of a 6 will cause mortal wounds. And if they haven't moved, they can shoot twice. And if they get charged, they can overwatch twice. They're just going to be great fun. I think they cost a lot of points, but I think Curse is going to get the most out of those points if I can get it off. So maybe that's one of those ones where, you know, I will start looking at the command abilities and thinking, do I want a High Priest, someone who can re-roll this chanting roll and make sure I get it off? And lastly, we have Universal Triumphs. Triumphs work pretty much the same. If you have less points than your opponent, you can take one. I think there is one that is a complete standout. It's the last one of the 3, so we'll work our way up to that. The first one is Bloodthirsty. Victory has made this army eager for the fight. Once per battle, after you make a charge roll for a friendly unit, you can say that it is Bloodthirsty. If you do so, you can re-roll that charge roll. It's fine. You can do this for a command point anyway, but it's one for free. I think, you know, it's pretty good. You do want your charges to be successful. There might be a critical one that you really need, and then you've run out of command points somehow, even though you get free ones every turn. We'll see. The next one is Inspired. The warriors from this army are filled with such conviction that they cut down their foes without pause or mercy. Once per battle, after you pick a friendly unit to shoot or fight, you can say that it is inspired. If you do so, add 1 to wound rolls for attacks that are made by that unit until the start of the phase. I think this is something that we've kind of gone over before. I really like +1 to wound because, as I said, it's quite easy to get +1 to hit, so you can use this to get +1 to hit and wound. And I think that makes this pretty good. If you use that combo, I think the unit truly will look inspired, and they're going to cause massive amounts of damage and be really successful on the tabletop for that turn. But the last one that really shines for me is Indomitable. The dauntless warriors that make up this army will stand fast even in the face of overwhelming odds. Once per battle, after you take a battle shock test for a friendly unit, you can say that it is Indomitable. If you do so, no models from that unit will flee in the battle shock phase. Now, what's really significant about this is that although there is a command ability that lets you do this, the new Monstrous Rampage Roar means that at the end of the charge phase, they can pick a unit, and on a 3+, that unit can't have commands issued to it. So you won't be able to spend a command point to make that unit immune to Battle Shock, and you just know the monster is going to ruin their day, and Battle Shock is going to be massive, and you know the rest of the unit is likely to run away. Indomitable does that without spending a command point. So I think that it's actually really worth considering trying to free up a few points to try and get that triumph so that you can have this up your sleeve, so that when you come across those difficult matchups, when this monster is going to absolutely, you know, decimate your forces and you think, oh my goodness, this unit that I've got that is holding this objective is all going to run away in the battle shock phase, you can stand up for another round. I think this one is really good to have up your sleeve, and if I ever get a triumph in a game, this is going to be my go-to one because of that monstrous rampage, and that is the one everyone's going to try and use. So there we have it. That is all of them. As you can see, they do work really well in conjunction with one another, and some of them are pretty good and definitely worth taking. Let me know in the comments what ones you think work best in conjunction together, and let me know which ones you're looking forward to using for your army specifically. Maybe you've got a particular unit in mind that you think needs to be able to fly or could really benefit with becoming a mage, something like that. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been useful. If it has been, please drop it a like, and please consider subscribing to the channel for more videos like this in the future. I am playing my first game of AoS3 tonight, so wish me luck. I hope it goes well. I'm just really looking forward to using this rule set. I think, like everybody has been saying, this definitely is the best rule set so far. And actually, although it is 45 pages long, it actually makes the game a lot more slicker and a lot easier to play, and everything is a lot more thought out and more well explained. And I think that it will cause less confusion and less going back to the rules, even though there's more of them to try and get your head around, if that makes sense. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. This has been 9 Inch Charge, and I will catch you